This is Chris Sims.
This is Tom Luongo.
This is Chuck Prodnick.
This is Alex Krainer.
This is Danielle Smith, and welcome to the Shaun Newman Podcast.
Welcome to the podcast, folks. Happy Wednesday. Hope everybody's having a good week. I'm having one heck of a day as I'm recording this. I got Jamie Sinclair sitting beside me as that's going to be tomorrow's chat. But he's sitting in studio waiting on Chuck Prodnick to get here. And I don't know, he's giggling at me, so I don't know if he's going to say hello or not.
Hello, everybody.
Before we get to today's show, let's talk silver, gold, bull. Jamie, do you own any silver, gold? Just curious.
Yeah, I do now, thanks to you.
Thanks to me. Well, there you go. Cool.
I got more lead than anything else, but
it's spoken like a true
learned
military man.
that from every civil war I've ever been to.
Well, the thing that we've been talking about here lately is the price of gold is a measure of trust in, government, but pretty much all institutions. And right now, there ain't a whole lot of trust to go anywhere around any of the institutions. And so gold is at all-time highs right now. And for the SMP listener, you can get quarter-ounce gold coins from the Royal Canadian Mint. And they got a little discount there for anyone looking. You can to protect your savings with physical gold. These low-cost fractional coins are a great buy. You can text or email Grahame down in the show notes down in the to get more details. That is, and when it comes to wherever you're at, silvergoldbull.ca.com. If you're buying anything off there, just reference SNP. It'll help you. It'll help me, and it will help Silver Gold Bull with their tracking. They track every time there's a purchase, and I'm referenced. So pretty cool. I get tons of support from all of you, and I appreciate it. And as you're buying your physical metals, your precious metals, make sure to reference me. It can help you and helps me. Caleb Taves, Renegade Acres. We have, he does the community spotlight here. I'm going to talk a little bit of Tuesday mashup. Not Tuesday mashup, the mashup. We got live election coverage this Monday coming up, October 28th. And man, we have quite the list of people going to be coming on. We're starting at 6 p.m. You can find us on pretty much all the major ones. It'll be live streaming on X, Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, and it'll be one of the things you can't find on the podcast. It'll probably go 5 hours is my guess. So if you're wanting to tune in live, we're going to be there all night, October 28th. That's a Monday. Here's some of the names that are going to be on. John Gormley, Jerry Ritz, Ken Rutherford, Lee Harding, Wayne Peters, Nadine Ness, Quick Dick McDick, Lise Merle, and hopefully there's going to be more to come. We've got some invites out to several different people. I'm sitting across from Jamie Sinclair. Jamie, you going to join us for a couple of minutes on the election night coverage?
You call me, I'll answer.
There you go. So Jamie Sinclair, there, he's added.
And get Henry on, too.
And maybe Henry Silas. Here's your welcome invite, Henry, to hop on with us. It should be a fun night. We did the British Columbia election live stream, and I went in approaching it way different than I did Alberta. I just wanted to have fun. Let's make election night coverage fun because, regardless, we have no implication on the results. It's whether or not people go vote. We're just going to talk about that and try and bring on some different commentators from hopefully all sides of the coin and have some interesting conversations. That's what BC was. I'm hoping that is what Saskatchewan will be. So that's October 28th. We hope to see you there. And that is Caleb Taves, Renegade Acres. They do the community spotlight. The Deer and Steer Butchery, hunting season is fully upon us. If you bag an animal and need to get it sliced and diced and put in your freezer, look no further than the Deer and Steer. That's Amber, who's going to be dealing with you, the Butcheress, over at the Deer and Steer, west side of Lloydminster. Give her a call, 780-870-8700. You can get hooked up with everything there. Chuck Prodnick just walked into the studio, which means I got to get running to do the next thing. But before we get to that, Cornerstone Forum 2025 is heading to Calgary at the Winsport May 10th. Early bird tickets are on sale right now. They are not going to get any cheaper than what they currently are right now. Keynote speakers include so far Tom Luongo, Alex Krainer, Chuck Prodnick will be gracing the stage again. We got two guest hosts, Chris Sims, Canadian Taxpayers Federation, and Tom Bodrovics from Palisades Gold Radio. And more to come, but we're waiting until we get confirmations, but hopefully some other names to announce very shortly. Jamie, you making the Cornerstone Forum this year? You attending?
What time of year is that?
May 10th.
Ooh. That my campground's fully up and running, but I could possibly get up here. I can make
It's
some
in
time for
it's
you.
in Calgary. Windsport.
Oh, yeah, I'll go. I'll go. I can get on a plane and fly to Calgary.
Oh man, wait a second. The blue. If anyone needs any reason to tune into tomorrow's military roundtable, it looks like Chuck Prodnick has just set the tone. Who knows? Who are we kidding? We know Jamie Sinclair set the tone. Regardless,
Again, I had to bring the beer.
hey, last time he was mad at me
Fridge
because
isn't
I wouldn't.
even plugged in. Are you? And thank God you're not being sober. Thank God. Let's cheers to that, hey Chuck.
Okay. Well,
The bin's in the harvest in the bin.
Substack. If you haven't subscribed, it's free. And by all means, that's where you get the week in review. You can see highlights. I know lots of people say 5 in a week is a lot to keep up with. Well, every Sunday night at 5 p.m., we release the week in review. It gives you a chance to, that's what was happening. Fair enough. And you can hop into whichever ones you want. Today, we released the first ever guest spot with Matt Ehret's article. Interested to hear what you have to say. It is for paid subscribers. There's a free preview if you want to, hop in. But we're trying to add some value to our paid subscribers. So if you want to check that out, by all means. Friday, November 29th, S&P Christmas Party is bringing in dueling pianos to the Gold Horse Casino. We have 4 tables left, folks. Just 4. And if you're interested, shoot me a text. All right, I got Chuck and Jamie sitting here. You already know what's going to be on tomorrow. But let's get on to the tale of the tape. The first is a former research chemist, amateur dairy goat farmer, libertarian, and economist, whose work can be found on Zero Hedge and Newsmax Media. He hosts the Gold, Goats, and Guns podcast. The second, a Croatian national, former hedge fund manager, author, and contributing editor at Zero Hedge. I'm talking about Tom Luongo and Alex Krainer. So buckle up. Here we go. Welcome to the Shaun Newman podcast. Today I'm joined by Tom Luongo, Alex Krainer. Gents, thanks for answering the call again.
Thank you for having us.
Of course.
This is the 16th time. So if this is your first time tuning into one of these, there's 15 more of them to go back on. And I almost had deja vu because I could feel Shaun like 10 ago go, guys, I don't feel like there's anything going on. And then Tom came unglued on me and was like, nothing going on. And then he rattled it off. So I was compiling the list of things that have happened since we last chatted. And I was like, I was just saying to Dust, he was in the room and then obviously he walked out. I was saying to him, like, it kind of feels like a storm. Then I started prepping for this. I started writing out all the things that have been going on. And I'm like, oh my God. Like if we were, 10 yards away, 10 steps away from World War III, I feel like we're 2 inches away now or whatever. And that's happened in the last month. I'll let you two decide on my thoughts, but there's been a lot go on in the past month.
Go ahead, Alex.
Granted, however, I think that there are determined forces working against that current. And I think the last time we spoke, there was that incident with the oiler of one of I think it was Abraham Lincoln or Dwight Eisenhower carrier strike group, which was being deployed to the defense of Israel, and then mysteriously the group's oiler, which is the vessel that carries fuel for the whole fleet, ran aground, and that was that. The whole carrier strike group was ground down. It couldn't deploy. And I thought, well, there's a possibility that people just simply don't want to take part with this. They don't want to take orders from Antony Blinken to go sacrifice themselves to defend some kind of an agenda that hardly anybody understands. Definitely has nothing to do with defending the U.S. Constitution, American freedoms, American way of life, homeland, nothing. It's these men and women would be going to sacrifice themselves for a foreign country, which, regardless of how you feel about that foreign country, you signed up to fight for your own, not for theirs. And so, that was that, a problem. And now, apparently, Israel had very advanced plans to deliver a major strike against Iran. And then somebody from the bowels of the US defense establishment leaked out the two key documents that gave Iranians and everybody else pretty much the lowdown of what's coming. So there went the surprise factor, right? It wasn't going to be a surprise at all, but at least the kind of attack, the contents of the attack. If the Iranians know exactly what's coming at them from where and what numbers, then forget it. Then obviously the attack had to be postponed for the time being, at least.
So just so I'm because that's one of the things I'd put in there, is Israel, they're supposed to attack them in the before the U.S. election. What are we sitting at, boys? About 14 days until the U.S. election?
Well, so Iranian rocket attack happened on the 1st of October. That's 21 days ago. In the immediate aftermath of that attack, the people in the Israeli cabinet were saying, we're going to respond. We have to go big, and it has to happen very, very soon. They were quite clear about that. It had to happen very, very soon, and they had every intention of going big. And then somebody yanked their chain because they wanted to attack Israel's nuclear facilities or their oil production facilities. And then the U.S. administration was saying, no, you can't do that. You're going to get us to the $300 a barrel oil, or you're going to get us into a nuclear war. So that, they had to rethink it. And apparently whatever plan they drafted now had to be shelved because somebody leaked it. And I listened to a number of U.S. Intelligence veterans, like Larry Johnson, Ray McGovern, and so forth. And apparently the only place that this leak could have come from is the United States, the U.S. intelligence community. And it couldn't have been a low-level operative who leaked it out. It would have had to be somebody very, very high level, somebody working very close to Blinken or Jake Sullivan or Lloyd Austin.
Lloyd Austin, yeah.
And so what you see is that even where the official Washington is gung-ho, supporting Israel to no end, set the planet on fire, Israel has the right to defend itself, blah, 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 blah. In the end, people who are called on to carry out these orders are unwilling. And so you have this huge problem that if you're going to be giving orders to people to carry out ludicrous plans, they're going to sabotage them. They're going to be unwilling. And this is not the first in history, but we've come to that point. And not only that, there's another problem. Everybody understands that A, Joe Biden stole the election. B, Joe Biden's not even in charge.
Right.
So you're asking the United States military to carry out missions on the orders of who exactly? If there was a commander-in-chief there at the top of the command and control hierarchy that people believed in, that people felt a certain loyalty to, in that case, even if they get the orders that they don't necessarily agree with or understand, they say like, all right, because Dwight Eisenhower said so, because Douglas MacArthur said so, I'm going to do it. Because Donald Trump said so, let's go, let's get it done. But if it came from the bowel of an illegitimate administration, from some Jake Sullivan or Anthony Blinken or Susan Rice or Valerie Jarrett or Barack Obama, they're going to say, hell no, do it yourself, fight your own wars. We're not doing it. And then, you get these oilers that get stranded, highly classified documents that end up leaked. And so my point is that I think that the ranks of madmen who are risking World War III are very small. It's a very narrow group of fanatics.
Yep.
But they depend on a larger group of competent military staff to carry out the orders. And if the orders don't make sense, or if they're too risky, too much to lose, too little to gain, then they're going to be resisting these orders. So even though on the surface appearance of things, we are going into World War III, and there's very little anybody can do about this, in reality, there's a lot that many people can do about this, and they're doing it. So it's not a foregone conclusion. I think at this point, it would have to be a series of grave miscalculations, misunderstandings, and errors that would actually trigger an irreversible escalation to World War III.
I'd agree with nearly all of that, Alex. And I just would add some color to that and say that leak was very significant. The fact that both the U.S. put troops on the ground in Israel, which everybody got wrong, and the Russians put troops on the ground in Iran. Very astute point to know that once they're there, those are tripwires. Iran attacks Israel, you're killing Americans, we're going to war. Israel attacks Iran, you killed Russians, we're going to war. So this is the way military guys de-escalate shit that the diplomats, and I use my air quotes on that, very diplomats are trying to gin, and the intelligence guys are trying to gin up. This is, I mean, dude, I'm telling you, every time I play these things out, I'm like, holy shit! I've seen this story before. I saw this coming. I've talked about the show 1,000 times, but the second season of Ghost in the Shell standalone complex, this is literally the plot of the show. Is a rogue intelligence agent within the Japanese hierarchy was attempting to get the United States and was trying to get the United States and into a world war, into a nuclear exchange over a fake refugee crisis. This wasn't predictive programming. This was 20 years ago. They were just seeing that they were just that far ahead. And so what you just described, Alex, and I agree with you. Blinken and Newland and a certain small cabal of people have been trying to manipulate the perception around events in order to get certain things to come to pass. And then everybody to make a mistake. And thankfully, what we've seen going, and I'll add more color to this by saying, look, why did the U.S. and Russia not get into a shooting war over Syria? Their air forces were both running in right next to each other in the Syrian airspace because nobody in either the Russian military nor the American military wanted to get into a shooting war with each other. So they had their deconfliction hotlines. The defense departments on both sides were talking to each other and making sure that they all stayed out of each other's way while they carried out separate parallel missions that were, yes, slightly adversarial, but there was nothing they can do about it. And who was it? Somebody else said something recently. I think somebody said this. They said, look, I think it was even Blinken who said it. Look, we can't, in terms of Ukraine, like going to war against Russia by allowing you to shoot missiles and bomb St. Petersburg. would start a conflict with Russia that we can't fight. We're not going to fight. We don't want to fight. And that was the end of Ukraine. I mean, Blinken eventually had to acknowledge this, but at the same time was trying to gin up a war between Israel and Iran. And then that failed when the military tapped him, And again, I was just at the Mises Supporter Summit last weekend, a couple weekends ago. And I was speaking to some people who are retired O5s in the U.S. Air Force and some others in the U.S. military. And they're all saying the same thing. And then we were on with Lieutenant Colonel Steve Murray, and we were talking about this, Alex, right? About how the O5s and the O6s, the lieutenant colonels and the full bird colonels, are telling the generals, we can't fight these wars that you want to fight. And then I mentioned that, and Lieutenant Colonel Steve Murray, a retired O5, said, oh, and by the way, you have no idea how much power we as lieutenant colonels have over actual military, not policy, but what we actually implement.
Yeah.
And what did I say to you guys and like ages ago when we talked about all this? We talked about election fraud. We talked about everything else. Eventually, I said, at some point, the O5s and the O6s, the lieutenant colonels and the full bird colonels will make their presence known and make their attitudes felt, and they will force the military and the political class to stand down. Everything above that level is political. All the generals and the Joint Chiefs and all those guys, those are all politicians. They're not military men. The military men, the guys who actually carry out the orders, are at the colonel level and below. Those guys, as to Alex's point, fight for the United States. They serve at the pleasure of the people, and I still firmly believe that is. And I remember thinking through. I'm like, yeah, the high loyalty is there within the U.S. military hierarchy. These are highly conscientious people that have decided to pledge their life and sacred honor to this, and the men underneath them, and everything else. And there are still plenty of highly conscientious people. I'm talking about in the big 5 pillars of personality here. Those people go to the military. Those people look like Tulsi Gabbard. Okay? And those people don't become generals in Obama's army. They don't. And so that's, I think, ultimately where this. So I'm fully on board with you, Alex. All the tea leaves, if you read between the lines, are all, we have brought it to this point. That's enough. Now stop it and sit the fuck down. Now, is that going to be enough? I don't know. But knowing that means that these same people have to be telling the Iranians and the Russians and the Chinese, hey, we have this under control. Don't do anything dumb. They're going to probably punch you in the mouth again. Just take it. I mean, but Putin understands this. He's been the one literally telling everybody, going to Iran and going, calm down. Calm down. And I remember talking with Dexter White about this ages ago, and he was always said that, he was always looking at Iran from a perception of being, of Persian culture and that there's a very macho element to all of that culture, and that you punch me, I have to punch you back. Right? It's very, there's a certain machismo that exists within that area of the cultures in that area of the world. And that's what had him spooked about all of this ages ago. Right. And I said, well, we'll see whether or not the Russians, who are really good at serving revenge cold.
Well, I mean, when you talk about Putin, I just think of Muhammad Ali on the ropes. He's just sitting there, and you think you're drilling him, and he's just taking it. Pretty soon, you're so tired, he just walks up, boom, boom, done. And I mean, Tom, you bring up some very, very, very good points. You guys make me hope. Like we're 2 weeks away from the election. You're making me hopeful. I'm walking in here going like everything looks like it's heading for this, and you two are. Oh man, it's possible that maybe you're going to let me have a happy. Well, as we record this, a happy Tuesday, happy Wednesday for the people who listen.
Well, let's not jinx it. Yeah, let's remain hopeful without jinxing it.
Well, I mean, but in fairness, Alex, when you guys were in studio talking to me, he said it's conversations like this that help Do you get everything right all the time? No. But you're pointing out to people.
What do you mean, no? What are you talking about?
Oh Lord, it's hard to be humble.
There are people
in every way. Like, come on. I can't wait to look in the mirror. Come on, dude. Let's sing along. I get better looking each
All
day.
right. Maybe
all I was saying is you guys continue to point out how it's easy to fall down the hole of like it's hopeless, despair. But watch we like to point out, my list. Iran tested the nuclear weapons. Right. Ukraine wants nuclear. Israel has planned a strike, and the U.S. leaked it. But now you're actually looking at it from the opposite. It's like, well, actually, they leaked it. That right there should tell you something. Yeah. And these conversations are helping point out, I think, hopefully, to the population, like, look, there's other people in the government that aren't complete and utter nincompoops that are all for war and taking us all there and killing a whole bunch of the population. There's a bunch of good people trying to fight the good fight.
Yeah, and I would say that probably it's a majority. And I want to go back to something Tom was talking about a moment ago. How come Russia and the United States didn't come to a shooting war over Syria? There's more to that story, and it's good. So here's what happened. The U.S. troops were sent there under the pretense that they're going there to fight ISIS, right? They're going there to eliminate terrorists, which wasn't true. So, what you call 05s and 06s, they were being lied to. They were being mobilized there on false premises. And they resented it because what they've done was good intelligence work. They knew where ISIS was. They got all the information. And then there was this period of time where they kept sending to the Pentagon the information about, well, we have to strike here, we have to strike here, we have to strike here. This commander is here, this commander is there. This cluster is here and there, and their weapons and their fuel and everything. And so they would have been able to blow them into pieces, right? But the Pentagon kept no, stand down. And so they were like, what the hell? Why are we here? What are we doing? And then when the Russians intervened, what they did is they handed their intelligence to the Russians. Here is your list of targets. And then the Russians blew them up, like literally sending missiles through the windows of these people's bedrooms. And so, this is how this happened. And then, there was a moment where literally a convoy of Russian soldiers and a convoy of American soldiers were driving on the same highway, and they came across each other, and they all stopped. They shook hands. They exchanged gifts. They met each other as friendly warriors, as backers for the same cause, and it was a very friendly occasion. And so this is when you go with 05s, 06s and below, this is the reality, and this is the reality which people higher up like Blinken and Sullivan and Victoria Nuland and so on, they're massively vexed and frustrated with this because they can't get unquestioning loyalty to do whatever whatever Blinken orders them to do. They just simply won't, because
I remember that Blinken is not in the chain of command. He is the Secretary of State, and he's not the president, even though he's been acting like. It's a really, really important point about that, Alex. When I remember watching, it was in 2015 when Putin moved into Syria. I would not consider myself at that point in time even 1/10 as having an understanding of what's going on or anything else. I was literally in like heavy duty learning mode, right? And then it's just writing about it and thinking about it. And what I said was, look, the Russians, like I never believe the ISIS story. I'm like, we can relicense places from space, but we can't fight ISIS in the desert. What are you fucking kidding me? I mean, just that basic, just asking that simple question and then saying, oh, well, there's clearly an operation at work here. And then I said, I remember telling my Newsmax, my editor at Newsmax at the time, and I wrote about this in my newsletter. I said, look, Putin's going to walk in there. This is the most significant moment in geopolitical history of the 21st century. He's going to walk in there, and within 6 to 8 weeks, he's going to blow up the entire lie about ISIS and Syria and everything else. And which is exactly what he did. What you just did, I thought about it just simply from the perspective of the Russian military will come in and just do what needs to be done. They're not stupid. No, add in that the Americans were giving them the intelligence to do this. Not a layer that I had ever considered, but it's an excellent one. So I just wanted to
but that happened. That happened.
Right. Now that you mention it, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. And so, and also these people that you call 05s and 06s, when you listen to them, people like Lieutenant Colonel Steve Murray and Douglas McGregor, people like that, you see that these people are intelligent, that they're competent, that they know where their loyalties lie, and their heart is in the right place. So, when you give them order, they better make sense, or they're going to say like, sorry, can you tell me why I should do this? I have my men here. Should I go and sacrifice them without really understanding what the hell you want me to accomplish?
Like, so we're not British.
If I use Tom, you've taught me a lot with.
Sorry, I couldn't help it. Like, we're not British. We're not going to sacrifice a bunch of colonials in Gallipoli or the Boer War. We're not British about this. We're Americans. We don't sacrifice our men for no goddamn reason. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say that out loud?
If I look at the board game, Tom.
Sure.
And you go, well, Israel was going to attack Iran, right? That was going to be the big play, and it's yeah.
That's the Mac Daddy
for people not watching. He pulled out the Dune board game. Yeah, that was.
It's like it's right here. It's behind me. I should really move it up so that it's visible.
Well, I just look at this and I go, okay. Is the next 14 days as we lead up to the election a very dangerous point in our history? Yes.
Yeah, it's very important. And it's very dangerous. Yeah.
Okay. So you point out the one, Israel was going to do this, but now it's been leaked, which means now they can prepare, blah, blah, blah. And I go, yeah, but if I add in all the other conversations, I'm like, it's like, but they don't have just one lever they're going to try and pull. I bring back on Lieutenant Colonel Stephen Murray, and what did he talk about? All these guys talking about the southern border of the U.S. and that being a lever they can pull too, right? With all these different, military-aged guys being in the United States and different things like that. So it's like, okay, this lever isn't working. Maybe another lever will work. In the next 2 weeks, do you see one of those levers being pulled, or are we going to, in fact, get to a U.S. election, Donald Trump or Kamala Harris, whoever wins it, steals it? I don't know. Are we going to get to November 5th without something wild happening?
No. They're going to pull all the levers from here. And they've pulled a lot of the big ones. Israel, Iran, Ukraine hitting incursion into Russian territory. Like we've seen a lot of them, right? We still have the financial markets. We still have they've trial ballooned like monkeypox. Didn't work. We saw this coming when they tried COVID lockdowns again after Omicron, right? I think that's when I declared peak Davos, right? After Omicron failed. They've tried monkeypox. They've tried this. They've tried this. They've tried that. What they're going to do, I think what they're in the mode of, I think the mode now is going to be, they're going to try one or two other things to set up the moment. And then when Trump wins, that's when they're going to go for a full, they're going to go full shitbird crazy town with rent-a mobs and the rest of it in the hope that they can create some kind of national dissolution or something along those lines. Everyone's going to try this. I was just reading Martin Armstrong this morning, and Martin was talking about, look, they really do want to declare martial law and invalidate the election between now and then. And so will they gin up some kind of domestic, thing? And that's the other reason why they need the war. They need the war so that they can declare martial law so that they can suspend the election. That's the flow chart. That's why Iran holding their water and not indulging their machismo, why Putin holding his water, not indulging the Russian fatalists that are behind him, why that's so important, right? Because they understand that you got to get through the election because that's the order of operations that they're clearly playing for. And the people who are fomenting this are, of course, as always, the British, and to a lesser extent, the Germans and everybody else, trying to get the United States to do something that would be fatal to the United States, because then they win both ways, right? They run the table on us if Iran strikes Israel between now and the election. So then will there be a false flag against Israel? Like, does anybody believe that Iran tried to blow up Benjamin Netanyahu's house? No. Netanyahu blew up his house in order to try and create sympathy vote, in order to try and create some kind of outrage. I was just going to look at that. I went, dude, stop bombing your own freaking house for the insurance money and then calling it an Iranian attack. Like the ham-fisted bullshit about how Iran wanted to assassinate Trump. What are these? On what planet are these people operating at this point? It's so pathetic, but it doesn't mean they're not going to continue trying. That's what I'll keep saying.
What did you think then about? Well, I don't know. You brought up Trump, and you brought up him talking about Iran and him, basically got to have increased security, and then he was saying, basically giving approval for Israel to go bomb their nuclear plants and different things like that.
Trump says a lot of things because
It's
Trump
true.
because Trump likes to negotiate, and he likes to negotiate with up here to get this when he should get that. That's his. So, like, I don't think for a moment that Donald Trump isn't a royalist and pro-Israel, but what he is actually more than all of those things is he understands that none of this is in America's best interest, and he's an American first. And when you put it all together, you have to think about Trump in terms of his order of priorities and preferences. And I think he's made his order of priorities and preferences very clear. And because we're all anxious and worried, and with good reason to be anxious and worried, that we then start conflating these other things and looking for patterns and looking for data that confirms the outlier as opposed to the base the base argument. And what I have to do every once in a while, guys, is I just because I'm susceptible to this as well. I'm not throwing shade on it and anybody at this point. What I'm trying to do is I remind myself when I see it reflected back at me, I take a step back and go, you know what? How about we reorder properly? How about we sit down and think about order of priorities, probabilities, and all that stuff, and then take a deep breath, go out, pet my dog, then try and do analysis again. Literally, I have to do this like 3 times a day.
You bring up an interesting point, because we were, on a very smaller extent, we were talking about a couple weeks ago about Alberta and how when I was growing up, I was Canada first, Alberta second, or growing up Saskatchewan second, right? Province second, always country first. And what we see out of leaders is almost like world first and not your country first. And we're seeing it play out in real time in so many countries where billions upon billions of dollars are leaving the countries, while people are, just take the hurricane the aftermath and the money going elsewhere, but to the people who are being suffered, or Hawaii, or go on and on and on. And you see that played out, not just in the U.S., but a ton of countries. And when you bring up Trump as U.S. first and, pro other places second, I think that's really an interesting point. And the fact that, what do people probably hate about Putin? Well, he's definitely Russia first. And, China, same thing. Korea, the same. It doesn't mean you have to love what they're doing in their countries, just that they operate from that mentality. And in the Five Eyes specifically, we seem to have, I guess actually I should say Europe would be the same way, right? If you're part of the EU, all of a sudden you're supposed to give over all your thought process to the EU instead of what to do best for your country first.
Well, I think that's the consequence of the agenda, which is pushed by, I think the usual suspects at Davos, to progressively disintegrate the sovereignty of individual nations, and not everybody agrees with that. I mean, I think most people don't agree with it, and the only people who do agree with it is probably, the banking oligarchies and their their supporters, because they want to own the world. They want to control everything. They don't want to deal with pesky Putins and Viktor Orbans and people like that. They want their obedient technocratic puppets like Justin Trudeau, Olaf Scholz, people of this type. And so, they hate people like Putin, like Xi. They hate people like Donald Trump, Viktor Orban, everybody who puts their country's sovereignty and independence first. And so it's not it always goes back to that hypothesis that it's a conflict between two systems of governance. And this system that we're all up against is exactly the globalist, imperialist, colonialist system that's controlled by the banking oligarchies.
North Korea has shown up in Russia on the front lines, or at least that's what the videos have shown. What do you two make of North Korea now being with Russian troops?
It's a very low credibility allegation. So I haven't exerted myself over that one. I think it's another desperate attempt by Volodymyr Zelensky to save his own hide and to get the global international community all excited and motivated to go and intervene in Ukraine. But I don't think anybody believes it. I mean, really. I mean, it's in the mainstream media, and some people are getting all excited about it, but there's virtually zero probability that it's true.
That's interesting because in I don't know, not only is it mainstream, I don't know what the heck we call Alex Jones and others of that type, but like it's all over their channels, right? That North Korea has blown up roads and everything to South Korea. They're sending their troops to Russia. China's preparing for war, on and on and on and on. The fear intensifies, it increases. That what I'm finding interesting about this chat is you're taking all that fear and you're just kind of, it's not that it isn't sitting there and one doesn't have to be like conscious of the fact things have escalated, but you're both almost calm, which is very intriguing to me.
Okay, so why would they even come out with this? Because one of the implications is that Russia is finished, that they have over exhausted their military in Ukraine, and that they are so desperate that they need to resort to help from North Korea. So if you break that bond, then you can actually, so it's once again that, like Russia running out of missiles, Russian drafting criminals and the conscripts and all of these psyops. And I wouldn't exclude the possibility that there actually are North Koreans on the ground in Ukraine, but they're not fighting against Ukrainians. If they're there maybe to learn how to use certain weapons that North Korea may be buying from Russia, or maybe for their officers to gain some first-person experience and insight into a conflict that they might have in the very near future with South Korea. It's possible, and so you can run all the maneuvers, all the military exercises you want, but there's no substitute for the real thing. So it's given that now Russia and North Korea have this virtually a military pact, a mutual defense pact between themselves, I think it's entirely possible that some North Korean officers went to Ukraine to observe, to study, to master the weaponry and things like that. But that North Korean troops are there, hurrah, running across the fields and fighting directly with Ukrainian armed forces of Ukraine. There's 0% chance that that's true. I mean, that so far out of possibility that it's not even worth wasting. I mean, Alex Jones, whatever, he has his axe to grind.
I'm glad I guess I think it's important to talk about, to take it away then, because I get it sent to me all the time, right? All these things, and I'm like looking at it, I'm like, I don't even know what to make of that, right? Like, right? That's why I bring it up, because you guys could talk to it, and now people can go, oh, okay, let's carry on with life. One of the things that I'm assuming both of you will be paying close attention to is it started today, and it goes for the next couple, and that's the BRICS summit of 2024 here in Russia. When you see all those countries meeting, it looks like they're going to add a whole bunch of new members. What do you think is going to come out of the BRICS summit this year that's going to impact probably not only the U.S. but the rest of the world?
Well, let's start with what we know they're going to do, which is they've already announced BRICS Pay, which is their payment layer. That I think is the big thing that they're going to agree on, that having that payment layer. They haven't quite decided yet what they're going to do with their unit of account. We've all speculated on. We've all heard stories about the unit and what it's going to be, and a 60% weighting in the various currencies in the within the block, and then a 40% weighting towards gold. What I find very interesting is something that Vince Lanci pointed out to me on Twitter the other day when he took a screenshot of the app, which is that one of the currencies you can pay in is XAU, which is gold. And so now whether or not anybody's actually going to pay in gold or not is a different story. But the fact of the matter is that someone may request that something's paid in gold. So we'll see how that goes from there. I think what they're going to continue to discuss is how they're going to handle that trade settlement layer, or that unit of account aspect of how to deal with all the trade differentials. And that, at this point, all they really need is to have an intercurrency, an intercountry payment layer. And then they have to deal with the buildup of foreign reserves in each and everybody else's capital account, as they run. So some run trade surpluses and some run trade deficits. And if they don't want to buy each other's bonds, and, I'm not here to tell you whether or not you should buy, Russian OFZs or you should buy Chinese, dim sum bonds or anything else. Like, they have the option of denominating those trade imbalances in gold, and that's been the biggest impediment, right, to the breaking of the quote unquote dollar reserve system. Just that simple. So, I've seen commentators like Anas Al-Haji talk about that in terms of Saudi Arabia not killing the peg of the real to the dollar and all the rest of the stuff. It's very, very, it's an important part of the story. Like, how does that occur, right? How does that happen? So they have to be very careful how they do this, and they of course are going to have to be not only careful about it, but understand that they don't have a choice. They know they have a choice, because as they push this thing forward, because this is the direct attack, or not attack, but direct antipode to the existing system, that's going to invite further attack, right? And one of the things I've been thinking about a lot recently, we wrote about last month in the newsletter and whatnot, is that, why is OPEC still a thing, right? OPEC's a cartel. It's a price fixing cartel. Price fixing cartels are usually very short lived, unless they're being supported by either an external, someone pointing a gun to keep the cartel in place, i.e. through laws and regulations, or through external pressure, which is exactly the same thing, right? So OPEC still exists because the Western world wants to break the cartel to get control of the oil, to then use it as collateralization to collateralize their shitty currencies and all the rest of it. Well, the BRICS is yet another price fixing cartel, right? It's a defensive response where everybody comes together to defend themselves against an external threat. If you don't want to see the BRICS form and get more powerful, then the West needs to get over themselves, cut a deal, which is what Alex and I have been saying this for how long? Cut a deal. And Putin's been saying this literally: stop attacking us. Let's cut a deal. Let's trade some oil. Let's trade some tungsten. Let's do the thing. Let's trade some grain. Let's move some chips. Let's do the thing. And if you stop doing that, we won't feel the need to have to defend ourselves from your attack. And that's what the BRICS is. And ultimately, they're going to have to come to terms with the fact that as much as they want to go slowly to build something of lasting value, they also have to realize that as they form this thing, they're going to be coming under more and more and more intense pressure. Therefore, at some point, they're going to have to just pull the plug. They're going to have to just flip the switch and go, the unit's been turned on. And Enbridge and all the infrastructure has been turned on. And I don't know that, I listen to a lot of people talk about this, and in particular, like Brent Johnson's been talking about this on Twitter, saying, notice how they keep using wiggle language, right? They keep using, weasel language about intending to and not, considering and blah, 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 and not we're doing this, we're doing this, we're doing that. That says to Brent, I'm not putting words in Brent's mouth, but that says to Brent that they're not serious about this, that the dollar is still stronger in its market share and its place in the world than the hype surrounding the BRICS. I can see it another way, which is that they're moving slowly. He's probably right. I'm probably right, partially. And there's going to be this give and take and this back and forth. De-dollarization, as Alex and I have talked about in multiple streams, is a process, not a state function. It's not a stepwise thing that you just go to. We have turned this thing on, and now the dollar is over. It doesn't work like that. There's too many dependent relationships. There's too many things that have to be unwound, and people shift their focus. They have to rewrite prospectuses on their funds, and it's a massive amount of work that would have to be done for that to happen. So, ignore the hype. Respect the process, I guess is what I would say, and watch what they say during this summit about where they are in the process.
Yeah, kind of a slow burn. Then, Tom, is what you're saying, right?
Yeah, I mean, nothing changes overnight, because ultimately, only when the very powerful people to get together at Bretton Woods or here or there or the G7 do they go, nope, we're in a new regime now, and you're just going to take it. But they can't do that really until they've put the infrastructure in place, and then they can flip the switch. So they couldn't have the G7, the Plaza Accord in 1985 until after Volcker rang out all the inflation from the breakdown of Bretton Woods and the London gold pool and the establishment of the dollar reserve standard in 1983-84, the adoption of LIBOR as the debt indexing rate for all dollars around the world in 1984. Then miraculously we have the Plaza Accord, doing currency price fixing in late 1985. Right? That's the way these things work.
Faisal was asking on Twitter, when we talk about different timelines, and for me, the next 2 weeks is I don't know, something obviously to really pay attention to. I've been watching not only you guys, but others about the lead up to the U.S. election. Faisal wants to know, in the first 100 days, right? You get Trump, you get Kamala Harris. What does that look like? What are they doing in the first 100 days?
I would guess Trump would be talking to the Iranians. I think Trump would be talking to Putin. I think he would be talking to Xi Jinping. And I think that they would, have to radically de-escalate the march of folly. And, depending on who Trump is going to manage to get into his cabinet and what they're intending to do and what they're planning to do, domestically, there might be a purge, a pretty radical purge of the swamp. And I think that partly the Dems have to blame themselves for it, because they've really they've really run roughshod over the system of checks and balances. They've gone outside of the bounds of the law to pursue their agendas. And they set precedents that are going to come back to bite them. And I think that Trump, vindictive as he is going to take full advantage of this. And I kind of expect that people around him are inclined in the same way. And I think that a lot of them have a massive axe to grind against the Dems. And I think that, well, they're all kind of saying, oh, if Trump comes to power, we're all going to end up in jail. He's going to come after us. He's going to be arresting his political opponents. I have to say that for once, I do believe them. But it's not because Trump is going to come against his political opponents just, to make himself into a, cartoonish dictator and who, eliminates all his opposition so he could rule forever unimpeded. I think that they have broken the law in so many ways that it's going to be payback time. And I always go back to the 2012 HSBC case because that was massive. That was absolutely massive. HSBC got busted laundering money for Mexican drug cartels and international terrorist organizations. And this was on Obama's watch. And so Obama and Eric Holder let HSBC off the hook. That is, they negotiated a settlement. HSBC got a slap on the wrist and a small parking ticket. The whole shebang was directed out of London. Okay, this was, letters going from Chancellor of the Exchequer, George Osborne, to Eric Holder. This is high treason. HSBC should have been stripped of their license to do business in the United States, and something like 30 people in the C-suite and the board of directors should have ended up with prison sentences. Nothing happened. Obama administration voided the U.S. law to suit a foreign bank. That's high treason, and at the detriment of the American economy and of the American people. And so I think that what is very likely the case is that we talked about who the hell is in charge, and it seems to me you can't see this, but from everything that we could observe over these last 4 years, it does appear that Obama is in charge, and Obama with people like Valerie Jarrett and Susan Rice, and who knows who else, probably Blinken and Jake Sullivan and Hillary Clinton. They're the people in charge. So everything that's going on now is on them. And that in itself is a gross violation of the US Constitution. So they are in so much trouble if they lose these elections that it's going to be ridiculous. Is Trump going to be able to go after them? I don't know, but I think that they will do a lot to make sure that happens. And I see now that even the media is kind of moving from their unquestioning support for Obama, Biden, Blinken, DNC, and they're starting to question them. And I just wonder to what extent that's going to change, because I feel that it is changing.
What I'll say to that is that they are pot committed to trying to keep themselves from going to jail, right? This is again a talking point that we've had for months now, saying like they don't have any other option because they've already crossed the Rubicon like multiple times here.
Yes.
And because of that, what else are you going to do? You have to keep doubling down on the thing that on where you are. You don't have any other option, because otherwise, that way known oblivion lies as opposed to potential oblivion. And that's the calculus. It's not particularly difficult. So
Tom's trying to make a serious point. Nobody's watching. They can't see what
I'm
Alex.
just
He's
excited
back.
that I'm
He's
back
back.
again. That I
Alex
can
is
move
back.
next
It all
week.
is good. And, he's smiling. He's doing the thing.
Well,
So-
that's the thing. They're pod committed, Tom. And to your point, it's like, okay, so we look at, it comes off Faisal's questions. We're just looking at timelines. The next 14 days. Heck, I've been waiting for something to happen in the month that has been,
Right.
Like I've been sitting here and I'm like, am I in the middle of the hurricane, like the eye of the storm, and we're just about to step into crazy town? Or has deals been cut on the backside? Because in the first 100 days, you go, Trump's going to get in, he's going to talk to Putin, he's going to talk to all these guys. He's already talking to him. There's no way he isn't texting him going, just wait 14 more days. Just hold on. I'm going to get in. We got good people. Look at the team around him now.
Yeah.
You don't have to love them all. But what everybody's talking about is like, this is really interesting to watch. Look at all the people garnering support for Trump. And he's talking to all these people. So I look at the first 100 days and I go, well, he's just going to make it publicly announced that he's talking to people. He's talking to them all right now.
Of course he is. Of course. No, you're absolutely right, Shaun. That's a really good point. The first 100 days are going to be. It doesn't really, to me, it doesn't really matter. It's because it's what happens during the transition. We got to get through that first, right? We have to get through what are they going to do to try and stop Trump from actually getting into the White House, and then, implementing what he wants to implement. What's clear and obvious is that he's put a team around him to clean out the agencies and the executive branch, to put in his loyalists. Now, Obama purged everyone. And then during Trump's first term, Trump didn't get rid of anyone because he didn't understand how government actually works, which is that executive orders aren't law. They are directives to the cabinet secretary to do X, Y, and Z, which the cabinet secretary has the discretion to take under advisement and to implement or not implement. When you have an entire power structure underneath you that is aligned with your quote unquote vision, then these things get executed. When you have a guy at the top that no one is listening to, nothing gets implemented. And then the guy at the top has to take, and then you just run a media campaign against him from the right, by the way, saying, well, nothing's going to change. Trump didn't get anything done. You're wrong about what happened the last time. And you're not serious as commentators if you do not understand the way the system actually works. And you're not willing to engage it in the way that it actually works, which is what we've been trying to do. And I'm not saying that I'm an expert in how everything works. What I'm saying is I leave my mind open to the idea that things work differently than the way we think they work, because we have an agenda to produce a particular outcome and to move people into a particular space. That may be the case, but that doesn't mean it actually comports with reality. And oh, by the way, people that you're trying to persuade can see that. And they can see it at every level. And they can see that you're not serious because you're just running a script. No different than Victoria Nuland, no different than Bill Gates, no different than Klaus Schwab or anybody else. They're running a script, folks. And I don't care who it is. Anybody on the right saying Trump isn't going to matter because he didn't get anything done the first time works for the other team. And if they don't work for the other team actually by getting freaking checks, they work for the other team because they're too unsophisticated to understand the operations that are being run against them in the first place.
What you're saying is, I think, the military right now can't get it done. If we go back to the first part where Alex was talking about the military, the leader at the top, the guys that aren't the actual military are trying to do something that everybody underneath doesn't want.
Right.
And so they're not allowing it to happen. They're leaking things. They're doing a whole bunch of stuff to try and stop it. It's all your stories. On the flip side, when Trump got in, he had the same problem from a political standpoint.
Yep.
And what I think a lot of people are pointing out is this time around, he understands that. It doesn't mean he's going to come in and completely change the direction of the United States, but he's going to be able to do a lot more because he understands a lot of the problems that he learned on the first go around.
Right. And the point being is that we're now more receptive to that potential change at a functional level, because we are now literally staring at the end of the country. We're under that, all of these systems are under existential threat. And that's when our minds are focused on the potential for what are we going to put on what are we going to put in place on the other side of this? Because systems don't change until they're under existential threat. When everybody's fat and happy, when everybody's fed, when everybody's bank accounts and their stock portfolios look good, and their houses are going up in value and all the rest of it, no one is going to really, things kind of suck, but and then when everything starts to really suck, that's when real change can occur. Neil Howe has made this point many, many, many times in talking about how fourth turnings work themselves out. And so with that in mind, you can't use at inflection points like this, the past becomes prologue of a different story, is the point. And using past to undergird a stale argument when you've reached the peak in the cycle and you're on the other side of it now doesn't work, because now the story is changing around you. Because the story is, I don't know how we pick it. We've been on this vector, we've reached peak that vector. Now we're moving on a different vector, and we're going in a different direction. And you're still making the argument that we're going on the original vector. And it's kind of like political Malthusianism. It's a high concept point, but it's very important to see that this is why the inertia about things is our perceptions of a lot of things. And we can apply this basic framework to a whole lot of things. I've been doing this like everywhere, anywhere I can get my hands on in the last 6 weeks. Silver as a monetary asset, the government being able to do weather modification, blah, 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 blah. It's all the same shit. And Trump not going to be able to change anything is nonsense, when you can look and the guy's running political ads in swing states with unity, not MAGA, not the Republican Party, unity, and a picture of him at the center of RFK, Tulsi Gabbard, Elon Musk, Vivek, JD Vance. You don't think that's a changing of the freaking political guard, folks? These are some of the most successful people in the world, both politically and entrepreneurially and everything else. And the people who want to sit back and just throw spitballs in the corner because they're too black-pilled to get to see what's happening. Dude's got freaking Jamie Dimon on his side now, which I also predicted would occur. Same thing. It's everywhere. And so many people are behind the curve on this. And that's part of the reason why I love Alex, because Alex, like me, is ahead of this curve. I mean, I'm dead serious. We're ahead of this curve because we can see the way these systems are changing when they are put under existential threat, and we have to start theorizing about how people are going to react to that. And that's it. That's just it.
So, Tom was talking about the hierarchy, the executive orders, and all these things, how an organization functions. And I think that therein lies the big problem for the DNC today also, because I think that what we've seen over the last, 2-3 weeks is that Kamala Harris has begun to crater, and that Donald Trump has begun to take off like a rocket. And so now, in this DNC hierarchy, you probably have a lot of these cunning plans to do something to sabotage the elections, to make false flag, to assassinate people, to I don't know what else they might have on their cards. But the people who would be called on to execute some of these crazy ideas would have to believe that they have a fair chance of finagling Kamala over the finish line. And then they would be in the clear, right? Nobody would pursue them. But failing that, they would be, their lives would be over. Okay, they would be in so much trouble. It would be worse than death. And so I think that people are now starting to get scared, because I don't think they have a fair chance of finagling Kamala Harris over the finish line. And so you might now be asked to do something that's immoral, illegal, unconstitutional, un-American, and if it doesn't work, you're dead. So you might be thinking, the hell with this, I'm not doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And let the higher ups eat their losses.
Yep.
And maybe even come out as a whistleblower saying like, hey, like I've always been against this. I just didn't know any better until just now. And so I think that there's a good chance that at this stage, there's a lot of rats on that ship who are thinking about jumping. And I think that,
yeah,
and I think that we might see that.
And
No,
do we believe for one
Okay.
second, sorry, Tom, do we believe for
Sure.
1 second the people in the political class are all of a sudden going to all go to jail? I haven't seen that out of any country. And believe me, Canada is just a shining example of criminality in politics. It's just so evident. It just keeps happening and happening and happening. And, one of the things I've learned from my own country, we have an ethics commissioner, Von Finkelstein, can't make that name up. And literally, they get exposure. That's what they get for criminality, right? They don't use the criminality. We've talked a lot about it. They get exposure. They get exposed. Oh, yeah, they made a bunch of money. Exposure. So when I look at all this on the United States and Donald Trump coming in, I'm like, yeah, one or two might eat it. But, do we really think Obama's going to jail? Do we really think any of that's going to, they're going to find ways to work around this? The entire system's built for them to do that.
It is, Shaun, you're correct. And I think that, at the end of the day, there's going to be the vestiges of the power that these people still wield and the manila envelopes that they have, folders that they have on various people. And a lot of it's going to cancel itself out. Think of it like, just popped into my head. Think of it like the entire derivatives industry. Well, I've got dirt on you, you've got dirt on me, and we have all this dirt, we have quadrillions of dollars worth of dirt, and it norms out to $50 million worth of value at risk, or whatever the hell you want to put it out. So it's not really that big a deal. No, what it means is that that's all going to cancel each other out. We're all going to, okay, fine, you get to go to Martha's Vineyard and don't go to jail, you get to do this, we get this sacrificial lamb, you give us Susan Rice, we'll give you this guy, blah 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 blah, and then that's the way it's going to go down. We know that. But more importantly, if that is, I don't care about, I'm well past the point of these people getting justice. I think they should all be, fed to, they should all be hung by their toenails over the washing reflecting pool and fed to dogs. They're all mass murderers. I don't have a problem with that. I believe in libertarian justice, an eye for two eyes and a little bit of scaring. I don't have a problem with it. They're mass murderers, kill them all. That's fine. I'm not in charge of that process. I'm not going to be in charge of that process. No one will let me be in charge of that process, and probably with good reason. Okay, so understanding that, right, then what we care about is the actual practical knock-on effects. Will Elon Musk come in and create the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE? Will he get rid of a whole lot of, useless jobs within the federal government? My personal opinion, he should start overseas and work his way backwards in order to impact domestic GDP as little as possible. That would be my suggestion. And I say that as a libertarian and a doctrinaire Austrian and all of this stuff. That's how you do it. That's the kind of practical shit you do in order to turn the tide. That's how you do so. That's how you lead people to go, oh, these people are serious. They have really good ideas about how to fix the world. That could have been done, but we're not going to do that. We're just going to call the Fed an arsonist, and that set its own fire, and then, firefighter at the same time, and pat ourselves on the back for how clever we are. Sorry, it doesn't work that way. Clearly, it doesn't work that way. All right. So I'm at that point with all of this. I gave that shit up for Len ages ago. That's why I do the things that I do the way I do them. And it's very, very upsetting to watch this play itself out, because the brightest minds and the most passionate people are the ones taking themselves off the game board. And they should be, why are those people surrounding Donald Trump and not others? It's a good question. Maybe you should, and maybe that's the question we should be asking ourselves, because ultimately Do we believe that this thing can reform itself or not? That's up to you. And if you believe that it can be reformed, well, then you're going to go out and you're going to not bitch about it and say, well, I can't be yeah, but I can't do anything about it. No, you're going to go out in your very small way every day. You're going to go out there and you're going to do something that's going to effectively create a way to reform the system while describing the mechanisms by which we reform the system, as opposed to just stating over and over again, the system's corrupt. Those two things don't compute. You give that message and you wind up with people who don't know what to do. And and so clearly, I'm kind of distracted here and a little off topic, but it's important to understand that if we want these things to happen, they can happen, or they won't, because, the system is too sclerotic. But that's an academic observation. That's not a what are we going to try and get done observation. Elon Musk just shot a rocket in a low Earth orbit and caught it. Our definition of what is and is not possible just changed. Donald Trump just did an afternoon trolling the entire world by serving a fake shift at McDonald's. How awesome was that? The world can change.
Well,
these people can be shown the door.
The quote that comes to mind, and I'll let Alex hop in, is the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. That's what you're talking about, I think.
And never give in to evil, but proceed ever more boldly against it. Ludwig von Mises. Both of those things together still allow you to operate within the current zeitgeist and the current framework, because there are a lot of people out there who do not understand any of this, but they want to. And they want practical solutions, and they want to know, what should they do with their money? How should they send their kids to college? Should they do this? Should they do that? And, talking about what's going to happen 50 years from now doesn't matter. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted, I don't want to sound unduly optimistic here, but the world has changed over the last several years. Donald Trump won his election in 2016, and 2016 versus 2024. I mean, so much shit has gone down that, there's no way that it didn't make a major change in the way people perceive the media, the politicians, Donald Trump, the DNC, Biden, and all these people. And, we had 4 years of Russiagate, which I think now even people's pets realize it was a false flag. It was a psyop. We had the pandemic, which only just started during the final Donald Trump's last year in office, right? And people didn't. For many people, it took a long time to realize. Some haven't realized it yet, still, but it took people a long time to realize that too was a fake event, right? And now we have this insane march towards World War III, which we have, for the first time ever, we have a realistic probability of total annihilation of humanity, of the face of the earth. People are waking up to these things, and now one of the things, the way we look at things is the way we grew up, and we always grew up in this paradigm of post World War II, Pax Americana, peace period, prosperity. Everything's kind of okay, don't rock the boat, don't question things, just get a good job and build your career. And political life is who cares? There's left, there's the right, this dichotomy, right, between left and right. And I think for the first time, this is all coming upended, and we saw, which is a spectacular thing, really, a very prominent leader from the left side of the spectrum switch side and join Donald Trump, RFK Jr., right? That's huge. And so the whole left-right dichotomy is kind of being slowly retired as an irrelevant thing. And history has had many examples of the so-called night of the long knives, when there's a wholesale purge of a certain establishment lineup. And so who knows? Maybe this is coming. Obviously, it won't be long knives. It will be lawfare, but lawfare is extremely deadly to people, and I think that Trump is going to resort to lawfare. We'll see how effective he will be, and we'll see whether Hillary and Barack and Eric Holder and Susan Rice and people like that are actually going to find themselves behind bars. But I wouldn't dismiss it altogether. And I think it would have a very, very strong impact on people's morale to see this. It would be a gift to the American people to see this. So, let's see what happens. But, world changes, and we are in the middle of very, very radical changes at this time. And the last 8 years, the world is a completely different place.
Yeah, well, I mean, even this is the 16th time, Alex, we've sat down and done this. And if we go back essentially 16 months, right? It's been roughly once a month. Just think of how far. I even think our first couple of conversations went, where Tom was like, "World's done. We're done. World War III's coming." You're muted. You're muted, Tom.
Sorry, I was going to say it's longer than 16 months because the first cornerstone was over 16 months ago.
No, the first
it was in June of 2022. It's been over 2 years, Shaun. We've tried to keep a monthly cadence.
Yeah, you're right. Maybe you're right.
We did not early. Certainly not early on. We didn't keep a monthly cadence, but we've tried to keep a monthly cadence since then, which is great. Don't get me wrong. Just for the sake of
regardless, you go over the time frame of where we started. I remember when Tom was a little more doom and gloom, and I would say Alex was the voice of like hope. And over time of those 16 chats, so this will be the 16th, if people go and listen to it, you can see it start to change at all. I start to understand what the heck you guys are talking about, because for the first 4, I was just like, what the heck am I in? And then it starts to change where you're starting to see this group of people within the United States, but probably around the world, start to show some restraint, start to actually expose some things. You talk about RFK. Tulsi Gabbard's another one that went from the Democratic Party over to Trump, right? Like you're seeing all these things happen, and let's not like. I just had Stephen Murray, and you guys have been on with Stephen Murray as well, and a show to Mike Ferris because he'd been on the show too. And you can see things, other levers that they can pull specifically against the United States, which is very concerning. Mm-hmm. But when you look at the big picture, I go back to the Stephen Coughlin interview I did, don't know what you see what you know. Forget how he said that. Know what you see what you know. And what he was talking about was they keep showing you this idea, but go to your front door and actually see it. And look at what's happening on the U.S. election stage. You're seeing Democrats switch over large, big personalities to Donald Trump. That's a huge thing. And over the 16 chats we've had, it's been evident to me, right? Like, I come in here, I got my list of things. I'm like, oh man, this could be a heavy chat. And in the first 10 minutes, I'm like, this is not going to be a heavy chat. Interesting. No. I guess it's been too long. Don't get me wrong, there's things that are concerning, and there's things you have to pay attention to. I go back to the board game analogy all the time. Okay, their one move didn't work. Don't think for a second they're not going to try something new. And we'll be back on talking about that. But there are active forces at this point working to undermine that. The game is starting to be played. We talk in Canada all the time. Politics is a contact sport. I didn't understand what that meant 2 years ago, but I'm seeing it actively play out right now in Canada, which is really cool. And that is a collection of people starting to become involved.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely correct. And Shaun, and I'll be honest with you, for me, the turning point was watching the histrionics in the financial markets, and where I started to like really, am I right about this? Am I right that like Wall Street and the Fed are leading what amounts to a coup against these, an internal coup or an opposition to these people? Am I right about this? Can I believe that? Can I trust that? I don't know. Well, we'll see. Let's keep playing it out. But then when Trump survived, Trump lived quarter of an inch to the left or 2 inches to the left or whatever. And this is a different world. And any optimism that you think I might be expressing right now, forget it, dude. You're like, hey, Tom, why don't you come on the podcast? Why? What the fuck's the point? All right. Oil my liver, as I like to put it. So, yeah, no, I think Trump lived, and that changed everything because they took their shot and they failed. And then they didn't have they thought they had backup plans and plans within plans and plots within plots and all this stuff and blah, 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 blah. But the truth of the matter is that you can't do it now. Now you got to work with the guy. Now you got to back up. And good. Is it mean we're going to wind up in puppies and rainbows and, and Kapistan and all the rest of that shit? No. We're going to wind up with a system that's 25, 30% better than the old one if we're lucky. And we should be happy about that because the opposite is, unthinkable. And when the unthinkable was put in front of a lot of people, everybody said no. And then they tried the shock and awe. Well, we'll just kill Trump. And that didn't work. And then Trump chose J.D. Vance and threw all in with, effectively the PayPal mafia of J.D. Vance, Vivek, Elon Musk, those guys. And are those guys good guys? I don't think so. But as my good friend Pete Canones says, hey, I'd rather people who are indifferent to my being on this planet than hostile to it. I'll take that as a win. And if you're not willing to, engage at that level, then you're not serious. It's just that simple. There's an infinite gulf between theory and practice. And, we live in engineering. We live in practice. One of the things that we're going to start talking about is the difference between physics and engineering, right? The physics of the theoretics and the engineering of how the world actually works, how you actually build something that is real. And that's going to go through the massive, massive range of responses to stimuli that make up the 9 billion people on this fucking planet. And you better engage with that at a practical level, or you're going to be irrelevant really quickly. And that's what I know. That's what Alex and I try to do. I know that's what you're doing. This is why I will always come on the podcast. This is why I'll always go do Cornerstone. It doesn't matter to me, right? There are certain people that you have my loyalty because at that level, you get that we are trying to effect practical solutions to these problems while explaining and demystifying the pieces and the events as they unfold. And as they unfold, we can say, well, these are the things that are happening, but this is the world I still want to get, and blah, 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 and we move on. Otherwise, people just aren't interested. It's just not. So,
Alex, any final thoughts before I let you guys out of here?
Final thoughts. Well, I hope not. I'm planning to be around a while.
Fair point.
I think, I don't think it's necessarily just the next 10 days or however many are left until the elections. I think it's the next few months until January 20th or whenever it is that Donald Trump enters the White House. It's going to be ugly. It's going to be complicated. But I think that maybe things are going to work out okay. Maybe there's good grounds for optimism. And on that basis, I would say that we should not only remain optimistic, I would say that we have a sacred duty to cultivate optimism, because without it, you let your arms down. You're opting for learned helplessness. You're just letting yourself be led to the slaughter. And so, in order for things to work the way we want them to, because we want to leave a better world behind for future generations, we have to cultivate optimism. And like I deliberately use the word cultivate because this is something that you get out of it what you put into it. And if you think things through, you can always see the silver lining in situations. And if you stay with that, you can contribute positively to positive outcomes. So not just between now and January, but I think between now and eternity, we have to give it our best because we can. We're given this opportunity. Maybe we are here for that reason. And I'm pretty convinced that we have help from other realms to do what we need to do. That would be my final thought for this particular
This one, yes.
podcast.
Well,
Not the final thought period.
Well, yeah, one of the things that is the highlight of my weeks, I get to sit with you two, and then you both know Chuck Prodnick because he's been on stage with you, right? He's literally coming in the studio later today, and we're doing a talk on the rhythm of life. When Lieutenant Colonel Stephen Murray came on, he scared the shit out of me. I was just like, he talked about some things going down. And I'll be the first to admit I got Alex Jones, when he says, "Well," I was just like, "Oh my God!" And I was worried about all these different people who are listeners of the show. I'm like, how do you take the information that we're talking about and not give it to them? And then I talked to Chuck Prodnick about it, and he goes, "Oh, in the military, we talk about rhythm of life. You take data points, you take different things, but you can't get too high or too low." So I was like, well, we should have you come in and talk about that. And so they're coming in. They're the episode right after you. Him and Jamie Sinclair, two military guys, coming to talk exactly about that. But having you guys on, yes, the final thought. No, I hope, my hope for the future is we get to do this for 500 times, right? For the next however many years we got. Because this is the highlights of a lot of people, across not only Canada, but in the United States. They enjoy these conversations as much as we do.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear that. We all do our very best to put forth the best information and the best perspective that we have at that moment in time, and try to entertain a little bit along the way. Like, entertainment is kind of a part of the process here, because if it's education, it's that Mel Gibson thing. It's like, the 3 E's: education, entertainment, elevation. Think about it. Mel's not wrong about that.
Thanks for hopping on, gents. We'll do it again soon.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you, Shaun. Good to see you again, both of you. And onwards and upwards.